Hi everyone, another week, another podcast, this time with Shahaf, CEO of COTI, a privacy-preserving layer 2, and we talk with about all kind of things, from the go-to-market, the users they cater to, their challenges, and all these kind of things. Of course, also their technology. And if you're curious about any of that, that's your episode.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.
Who does your privacy-preserving layer 2 cater to? Who is the target audience?
Well, the target audience is obviously developers, but when correctly used, then it caters users of Web3. So whether it's businesses that obviously, as it is in the real world, don't want their entire data to become publicly available, like who are their suppliers, what is their revenue, what is their competitive edge. All of that is private data, and businesses don't want this to become public. And users don't want their entire transaction history to become public. And so we cater to dApps, dApps cater to users. And this is how it works. The same way, like Chainlink's technology caters to dApps, but then normal people use these dApps.
Whenever I hear privacy preserving blockchain technologies or networks, there's always this, let's say, one section that focuses on enterprise, one section that focuses more on the, let's say, degen side of things. Like where on the spectrum do you see your network or your solution?
Well, obviously we're infrastructure. It means that we are the spectrum. So enterprises, so real world assets, the $20 trillion that sit there and wait to go on chain. It can never happen without the proper privacy technology because it's not in the mandate of these institutions to put all this data publicly, right? So it's the number one concern of institutions when they're thinking about going on chain. So that's maybe one end of the spectrum. Or you know what, even more so, governments and CBDCs, and we're involved in our national currencies CBDC project. It's a concern for them as well. They need privacy for these transactions. So that's one end of the spectrum. On the other end, maybe even think about, the most degen thing right now is probably AI agents, right? So AI agents, right? Let's say you're building a bot and you want some of the logic to not be publicly available because it does something unique, like it trades in an interesting way, and you want to build a business around allowing people to copy trade it. If the logic is fully on a public ledger, then you don't have a business. Or on-chain poker, can't really play cards when the entire information is publicly available. So in reality, again, and in our normal daily lives, everything has a public side and a private side. Relationships have a public side and a private side. Businesses have a public side and a private side. And right now, as it is in Web3, we only have the public side. So what we're building is an enabler for everything on the spectrum. And it just depends on what sort of dApps will be built. Some will be very enterprise-oriented, and some will obviously be retail-oriented.
Okay, so that means you're not directly approaching enterprise, like, hey, let's do some kind of a test or pilot project here, or do you?
Of course we do. We work with governments, enterprises, other chains, dApps, and everything in between. And we have now we have our own incubator, so we help dApps actually develop on top of COTI. We make investments, we make grants, we do everything in our power to push for the growth of the ecosystem. And we're also part of alliances and educational cohorts and everything around it to make sure that the future that will have a private side to a public blockchain.
Speaking of growth, there are a lot of rollups out there, right? More specifically, also optimistic rollups like yourself. And there are also several privacy preserving solutions out there. Where and how do you try or want to penetrate the market to push through the noise? Like, what's your strategy?
Sure.
Like, yeah.
Sure. Well, obviously there are a lot of layer twos, but layer two is a commodity. And in that sense, we are a layer two because that's the best way to build our infrastructure, specifically being Ethereum layer two with cross-chain interoperability with 70 other blockchains, including oh, well, you name it, Solana and everything else. So we are um, interoperable completely. We're actually not an optimistic roll-up. We're built in another way, but I think none of it actually matters because scalability is now a commodity, and obviously we are scalable, and obviously transactions are cheap. That's the base. You can't really, if you don't have that, then any dApps built on top of you will be crippled. So we have that. So this is not our competitive edge. Our competitive edge is around being very scalable, but allowing for selective disclosure, confidential computing, privacy, and so on and so forth. So with that, we need to actually compete with someone else who is very scalable and can offer privacy. The way we are winning is using a technology that nobody else is using. And that technology is called governing circuits. And when you benchmark it in comparison with the competition, then you find that it's about 1,000 times faster, 1,000 times cheaper, and 250 times lighter, and can run on any device, including mobile. So when we're the only ones that can do that. So the state of the market is you are either scalable or you have privacy. You don't have both. We offer both, and this is how we are going to win in the technological race. That's not enough, obviously. It's not always that the best technology wins. So, we're privileged enough to be around in the market since 2017. So we already have a token that is already listed on major exchanges and have a high liquidity. And we have a very supportive and big community around us. So we have this go-to-market already in place, unlike new tokens that needs to really build all of this. We also have a very interesting way to build our ecosystem. Not all of it is unveiled at this point, but as we approach our mainnet, we'll be unveiling that as well.
Okay, very interesting. Like, your testnet is live, right? Your devnet, of course, as well. When you go for mainnet, like, what are the specific strategies? Are you just working with KOLs, or like, what's the idea? Because as you said yourself, layer twos are a commodity, and when you are in a commoditized business, distribution usually wins, right? So it's kind of like, I just would like to understand from your perspective how you try to place your product, your infrastructure as something way superior in comparison to other solutions, because otherwise people won't
Yes.
switch.
Yeah, so we're doing a few things. One is, as I've mentioned, we have launched an incubator and a substantial grants program that is valued at about $50 million to actually encourage new developers to build on top of our infrastructure. So they either come with the ideas themselves, right? So AI is very hot right now. So we had a few teams, including a one called COTI agent, that just applied to use our infrastructure. We support them, they build, and you have, and that allows you obviously to grow in scale. The other approach is through a stack that we've recently developed that is called Privacy on Demand. So that is an interchain solution that allows you to keep your current tech stack. Let's say you've built a DEX on top of Solana and you want to stay on Solana. This is where your liquidity is. Great. You can stay on top of Solana, but tap into COTI whenever you need something done privately. So that is an interesting technique because it doesn't really demand a lot from the developer. He doesn't need to sacrifice anything to start working with us. So that allows us to kind of like play with the technology and become part of our ecosystem. And then at some point they may fully migrate or they won't. It doesn't really matter. They are using our products. So in terms of go-to-market, this is what we do. Everything that is, PR and media, KOS, etc. It can only amplify your message. It doesn't create your message. It doesn't create adoption. You need to do the heavy lifting yourself, and then you can use all of these techniques to kind of like make sure that everybody is aware of what you're doing. But you actually need to do the hard work yourself.
Okay, so the focus basically is product-led growth, if I understand it correctly. Like you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool,
this
cool.
is infrastructure. Infrastructure is as good as its usage. So this is where we focus our growth. And the nice thing about it is that, someone is building a game on top of COTI. Great. That creates an audience that is interested in this. Someone is building DeFi, right? We have, Bancor and the team in Privex building DEXs that are intent-based and are privacy-focused. That is amazing. So that brings in this type of audience. People are building AI agents. People are building trading tools, data plays. All of that brings in the audience to the top of your infrastructure. And we want to make sure that we are useful, around the entire tech stack.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's an ecosystem play, right? The bigger and more
Exactly.
massive your ecosystem, the better.
Yes.
Speaking of all of that, like, what do you consider your biggest challenges right now? Like, what's currently like, what's the shittiest problems you get in terms of as a CEO right now that you need to handle yourself?
Well, as CEO, you never have just one problem. There's so many problems, but I would say that I think one of the interesting realizations is that around Web 2, everybody take privacy for granted because they assume, that the banking app that they use is private, and they're right. They assume that messaging is private, and sometimes they're right. They see HTTPS on the browser, and they know that they are private. And I'm talking about this type of private. I'm not talking about are my posts in Instagram private. I'm talking about the basic data protection, that right to keep your private information private, which is what we do. And when it comes to Web3, everybody immediately assumes that privacy is no longer important. Everything is on a public blockchain. It's transparent, hence it's great. And this is such a flawed thinking because you cannot build any interesting product and you cannot build any relevant ecosystem when everything is public. You just can't, right? This is why we're not building things around the internet that way. Yet I find it almost frustrating that we need to educate people about this. When they can log into their bank and immediately understand why the privacy is important, but then do a transaction on the DEX and don't care about the privacy at all. And again, this is not some libertarian thoughts about about it's not a cyberpunk sort of idealism. Not at all. It's just the basics of how we build technologies right now, and by the basic security of protecting private and information, and people are getting there. Enterprises understand it immediately because they are obliged by law, but like retail is getting it. Someone said, I feel that privacy is not a sexy thing. And you know what? He's right. But a lot of important things are just not sexy. Wearing a helmet around the construction site is not sexy, but it's super important. Seatbelts are not sexy, but they are important. So this is what you get when you're building this type of technology. So that is the only frustrating thing. but at some point it will become the standard.
Yeah, I mean, fully agree with you on that. What I could imagine, and that's just a guess, that maybe it's due to the user profile that you as a blockchain company actually target, right? You actually attract people that already accepted the full transparency and no privacy thing at all, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of you already have people that don't care as much about privacy.
Yeah, well, they
And
do care. They do care. They're just unaware of it because it's always, words are a confusing thing, right? You say transparent. Transparent is a good thing on a public blockchain. I agree to it too. But what if instead of saying transparent, in some cases I would say insecure connection, right? Or leaked data? Then you know that this is bad for you. So it's always a matter of context, right? And privacy is also a matter of context. Private to whom, private when. Um, and I think this is when it's get confusing to people because they're accustomed to the fact that transparency is a merit of a public blockchain, and they're right. But in some cases, this transparency becomes a security problem or a privacy problem. And then this is the sort of thing that you want to fix for your ecosystem to really flourish.
like in terms of privacy, right? You're sitting in Israel, right? Which is not too far from Europe, and Europe is basically one of the one of the continents in the world that is most sensitive to privacy. And now Europe is also like far behind a lot of things. But is that a market that you are also thinking about more and more when you build a solution like that, or is it just like we target everything and what sticks, or like what's the segmentation?
Yes. So, blockchain almost by definition, with with an access, with a global access means that you try not to limit yourself to certain geographies. With that said, GDPR, right, the privacy regulation for Europe, or HIPAA in the US, one of the first things that we've actually looked at when we built our infrastructure and asked ourselves, if can a legal team review our infrastructure, um, and actually uh, post like a letter or a legal opinion that says that, hey, these folks actually comply with GDPR, or if you're building a dApp on top of the infrastructure, you can comply with GDPR. And the answer is yes, and we've actually received this legal opinion. So um, obviously blockchains can't offer that right now, public blockchains, but we can. And I think, well, again, you can take regulations and completely twist it and miss the whole idea. I think regulations around privacy are important. People do have the right to act freely without needing to fear that everybody's watching every step that they do. They do have a right to be forgotten, right? They do have a right to, um, if they make a certain vote or a certain choice right now, which they are proud of, they have a right to delete that completely in a few years when they don't feel proud anymore of that choice that they make. And with public blockchains, you cannot do that. But if you have confidential transactions on top of a public blockchain, then you can. Then um, maybe when you vote right now, I mean, why is it that when we vote for governments in elections, we do that behind a veil? What happened to transparency? Why don't we have transparency there? Because people understand that they don't want to feel pressured by society when they make a certain decision, and that's the same idea behind a confidential transactions. So the short answer is that we work globally, but we do understand GDPR, HIPAA, et cetera, and have made a choice to include that in our tech stack and actually fully comply with it. So COTI is a privacy-centric Ethereum layer 2 that can be used by any dApp and any chain. It means that you can decide what transactions are public and what transactions are private, the same way life really works when they have a public side and a private side to it that are building confidential transactions directly in the wallet, which we obviously love. Civic is building dynamic identity solutions, and the ability to look at private on-chain data, make some assumptions out of it, and use that for identity opens up interesting things like, are you over 18 and live inside the US, etc. So Civic is doing that. We have cool DeFi projects. I've mentioned Bancor and Privex that are building a DEX that is intent-based. So it has more than 1,000 pairs immediately. And because you have privacy features, you can have all the sort of orders that you would have on a centralized exchange, like stop loss. You can't really do stop loss on a public blockchain because everybody sees where your stop loss is, or everybody can front run you. So essentially that will offer, a DEX like Privex will offer the functionality of a centralized exchange, but without the worries that come with a centralized exchange. So probably the best of all worlds. We have people building games with on-chain logic that can be private, like card games. We have an interesting project called NFA that are building a consumer app on top of Telegram that uses AI to analyze the sort of metadata that is available on social networks and kind of like tell people and build like a game around what people are trading right now and kind of like matches people with crypto opportunities. A lot of activity around AI and AI agents. Some of it I can speak about. Some of it I don't think I could at this point. But people are building crazy things with AI agents, and agents that can trade, and agents that can have meaningful conversation with other agents without unveiling the conversation. So a lot of interesting things that are in the making right now.
Interesting. When we think about privacy preserving infrastructure, a very dominant project in the space is Mina. I already, from my understanding, see a lot of differentiators here, right? But I would like to hear from you, like, where do you see your distinctive attack vectors, like, let's say, for their market share, for example?
Yes. So first of all, I would say that anyone that is building a privacy solution in the space, and I said it more than once, is my brother, not my competitor, because we are, they are educating people to kind of like protect their data and make sure that everything is secure the same way that we do. So every win for them is a win for us as well, and it's a win for Web3, generally speaking. So this is why we are part of the DCC Alliance, Decentralized Confidential Computing Alliance, that has more than 20 companies in it. Secret Network and Midnight and ourselves, and Phoenix and other chains. And it is allegedly we are fighting for the same market share, but it's really not about that. We are together trying to grow the market. So we all want the pie to be bigger, much more than we care about to get this slice and that slice, because the market is huge. So the best thing that we can do is actually grow it together. With that in mind, and without getting to the nitty-gritty of each project, I would say that the underlying technologies are usually different. So some achieve privacy by using something called TEE, or Trusted Execution Environment, essentially a box where you do the secret stuff at. It's very fast, but it's not very secured. So it's been proven to be very problematic in that sense. Some use ZK, I think that's probably the most popular one. And ZK is also a super interesting technology, zero knowledge proofs, but it's very limited. It's very limited because you need to know ahead of time what you're trying to prove, right? And new things means that you need to create new proofs. That is very expensive. It takes a lot of time. And because ZK is by definition not a multi-party computation technique. So by definition, you cannot build, or it's almost impossible to build interesting things like DEXs, where you have multi-party, or games. So ZK in itself is very limited. And when people talk about ZKs, they usually talk about when ZK is applied to do scalability solutions, to be able to prove that the roll-up that you've done is indeed true. And we're not trying to compete with that. That is an excellent technology for scalability. But when we're talking about privacy, we're just talking about something different. And lastly, there is fully homomorphic encryption. So fully homomorphic encryption is also a very interesting technology. It solves a very interesting problem around how to use confidential information without needing to decipher it, which is obviously intellectually super interesting, because it means that you almost eliminate the risk for data breaches because you never decrypt the data. But fully homomorphic encryption is not really ready for prime time. It is still very, very slow and very, very expensive and takes a lot of storage. So in theory, it's interesting, but not very useful right now. With gobbling circuits, we can do the same thing that fully homomorphic encryption does. So you can use encrypted information without needing to decipher it, but we can do it 1,000 times faster and cheaper. We are by definition part of the MPC techniques, so we are multi-party. And we know we use the best privacy standards, so an encryption technology, so everything is fully secure. So I do believe that what we are doing has technological merits to it. The rest is ecosystem building, of course, and community, etc. So it's not just about the technology.
How about security? Because I remember Vitalik saying, like, I think 1 or 2 years ago, about rollups in general, especially validity CK rollups. Like, that sick amount of code that you basically have, right? It's ludicrous to think that there's not a bug in it, right? Because it's new technology, right? That's just common sense that technology is not perfect. Since that you seem to be innovating here, how do you view that point? Like, what has your team undertaken? I know you probably have done audits and all these kind of things, but what is your viewpoint on that?
So the good thing is that a lot of the things that we're using are integration of things that have already been tested, right? So with gobbling circuits, it's actually more of a protocol than an encryption technique, right? The way you build a circuit. So the encryption itself can be encryption technologies that have already been battle tested for tens of years. So we're not worried about that part. When it comes to the roll up itself, or to the L2 part itself, again, we're using things that have been tested. There are obviously things that are novel. We audit them, and we're trying to look to multiple various vectors of attack, and that is the best practice. But and I would also add that you can compromise on multiple things when you build. This is the only thing that 100% you cannot compromise at all.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we now talked about scalability, about security. How about decentralization, which is always a very interesting topic for rollups as well, or layer twos. Where on the spectrum are you here?
So we launched the network, and it's distributed, but it's not yet fully decentralized. because of sequencers and other things that are obviously the case in any L2. But we have a solid plan to how to decentralize the sequencers and allow people to run it themselves, etc. So that's one aspect of it. When it comes to nodes validation, then we will start the network with probably a few tens of nodes. But one of the exciting things that we are doing is our plan to decentralize nodes and staking pools on top of our network. We haven't introduced it to our community yet, but it's already pretty much done in theory. But we will allow a permissionless way for people to run a node. And it's very rewarding because a lot of the rewards come from the protocol itself. And then some comes from running staking pools. And we will provide node operators with a software to run much more sophisticated staking pools than what you have out there right now. So we're pretty excited about this, and we'll wait. You'll have to wait until we actually announce it. But nodes will be, I believe, very decentralized. All the distribution of nodes will be very interesting, and when it comes to COTI.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm asking is Layer 2 Beat, of course, since you're not live on mainnet yet, hasn't done the analysis, like doesn't have the overview, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that's what I was curious about. Aside from that, where do you see the biggest challenges in the next 3 months for your team?
The next 3 months are a critical time because this is when we want to do all the security checkups from testnet to mainnet, all the stability checkups. So, it has to run smoothly and it has to be fully secure. We have to finish audits, all of that. And, we do want to make sure that we launch mainnet within Q1 next year. So it's super, super challenging. With that, we also need to build the node ecosystem that I've just mentioned, and to make sure that it's ready to launch during mainnet. And take all the partners that are already developing on top of testnet and kind of like make sure that their life is easy when they migrate to V2. And lastly, do a token upgrade to those who currently hold the COTI native asset to the new asset. And we need to do all of that in the next 3 months. So it's very challenging, but it's also the best thing in our business.
Well, it's crypto, right?
Yes.
In the end.
Exactly.
Like, cool stuff. Well, with that being said, thank you very much for your time. It was a really interesting session. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you liked the episode. I certainly did, as always. And it was a really interesting and insightful conversation about how to launch a new network and what challenges you actually face along the way, right? So that's always deeply interesting to me, like how to launch a business in certain areas. And yeah, that definitely was a good one. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you think and who I should talk to next.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.